Hey, did you go to the CCA last week?
Yeah, the CCA, the Canadian Centre for Architecture, which is an international research institution founded in 1979. Did you know that its main goal is to increase public awareness of the role of architecture nowadays? Research exhibitions and publications are their main activities. One of their past exhibitions was The Other Architect, which displays and emphasized the alternative aspect that architects could potentially explore. The exhibition was created by Giovanna Borasi, an Italian architect who is a curator at the CCA. It is interesting how Borasi encourages architects to step aside from the traditional industry to a broader and more adventurous role. Architects can embrace this role in order to find a more appropriate and innovative architecture for this time.
Well, I thought a traditional architect is the core person to take decisions for a project. The approach is more direct with definite goals, that is to physically build a project. Remember Michelle's question that how we as an architect are limited to design or build a project by addressing the context and incorporating a client's needs? I agree in the traditional system of institutional relations. It is difficult to work effectively with involved parties when considering official environments, formal relationships, or experimental financial plans, which, when combined, shapes new ideas and creates projects.
Well, Borasi means the other architect, which is an organization that engages intellectual research. They go beyond traditional architecture and build projects. It's not the final goal. These organizations attempt to rethink our profession and to analyze the role architects have in our society. It is important how practice, academia, and research are combined and explored in diverse environments. The other architect investigates what architecture could be. It understands architecture as a way of thinking and observing the present. It also proposes new methods and seeks for unexplored territories that can help them to find a new way of practice. Do you remember that Borasi mentioned in her lecture that nowadays a lot of architectural firms' missions are too generic? Giovanna Borasi selected 23 case studies from the 1960s to today. The selection process included pluralistic and multidisciplinary groups that studied tangential subjects to architecture, established a healthy separation from their regular practice, and proposed a portable knowledge.
So let's see some examples. Did you know Emo is the reflection of Oma when looked at the mirror? It was founded at the end of 1990s. It's interesting that although they're the same entity, they represent two distinctive aspects of architecture and thus separates the real and the virtual. This evokes different uncertainty of a project or different intellectual dimensions that are involved. This separation creates multiple possibilities, like in a laboratory experiment, giving rise to an intellectual field of architecture.
Another example is lightweight enclosure units, which was a research project led by the architect Cedric Price and engineer Frank Newby. This organization conducted research on lightweight and inflatable structures, which later on contributed to important topics of architectural investigation, such as modular and flexible constructions. Did you know that light enclosure units was a special research project because it was commissioned by the United Kingdom's Ministry of Public Building? This project questioned the regular relationship between architect, client, and assignment.
In addition, Global Tools is a multidisciplinary experimental education program and was founded in 1973 by members of the Italian radical architecture movement as a direct reaction to the political, ecological, and socio-economic crisis in Italy at that time. Responding to what the group saw as conservative teaching methods in architecture, Global Tools intended to reconceive the field as a political project through a new form of education. Did you know Casabella was their site for research and exploration? Global Tools called itself a non-school focusing on everyday life and aiming to rediscover a direct relationship between craft and design product.
So let's bring an example from Asia. Architectural Detective Agency was founded by architect Fujimori and Hori. Their main goal was to analyze the urban fabric of Tokyo in search of disappearing structures that were excluded from the original Japanese architectural history. These detectives walked around Tokyo Street, photographed, and drew early modern buildings. Their work was compiled in the book The Complete Inventory of Modern Buildings in Japan. If you think about it, Fujimori and Hori were not necessarily building structures. They were producing a rigorous survey of Tokyo that is in fact a portable knowledge.
It's interesting, Architecture Mission Group was more like a coding architectural knowledge and expertise between people and machines. It was founded in 1967 and illustrated how a computer can interpret complex system using system of relations and interdependence between elements that is similar to the physical building.
Additionally, Design-a-thon were interactive experiments conducted by the architectural firm Moore Gruber. These experiments used live television to broadcast talk shows or game shows. It was amazing how the viewers were able to call in during the shows and contribute in conversations about urban planning projects. Design-a-thon is one of the few examples in which architects have used television as a tool for presenting local design projects.
You know that for us architects, the place, the form, and the method are important criteria to design a project. In the late 1950s, Konstantinos was concerned in finding the optimum condition to address the global ecological problem, human settlements, and the economy. Thus, he and his multidisciplinary crew removed themselves from the local problem to address the dilemma. Thus, Anyone Corporation was founded with repetition of one model in different places that generated multiple possibilities and created a new platform for debate.
Another example is the Atelier de Recherche et Action Urbaine, which was founded by the architect Maurice Coulot in Brussels during the 1970s. But at that time, several official or governmental projects were threatening and modifying the fabric of the historic city of Brussels. RAU presented counter projects which offered an alternative scenario. The counter projects were an important space for dialogue and debate with the citizens rather than a protest.
Another interesting fact is the Pigeon audiovisual by Monica Pigeon. The purpose of the series, consisting of over 200 illustrated talks, is to widen the horizons of students of architecture and design by giving them the opportunity to share the thinking of leading members of the profession worldwide, to whom they might not have access. She used slide tapes to record the conversation, other than documents, that was unique in order to connect to the wider public. It was then sold to libraries, schools, and institutions. According to her, one must listen to the ideas of the architect in order to understand the meaning of architecture. So, do you think we have other architects amongst us? Currently, there are a few practitioners who are stretching on the unexpected role or an outcome that architecture can become that is different than that of the role of a traditional architect. Architecture could evolve or become intellectual as a discipline and innovative by documenting architectural events or books other than buildings so that it can transcend like that of a building. For example, like Common Room is an architectural practice with a publishing imprint and an exhibition space. It is a collaborative platform based in New York City and Brussels with 3 founder architects. You guessed it right, the name and the concept is to work together or individually to include other people in the same office space. Their archive consists of 5 newspapers reflecting ideas, activities, specific events, 3 books, documentations of activities that took place. The idea is to treat everything as a project. Lecture, research, all are projects and all are equal. There is no hierarchy between a building, a book, or a lecture.
Another example is situ, composed by 3 parts: situ fabrication, situ studio, and situ research. Some of their projects can be approached by the 3 situ division, but some others are approached by just one. Situ fabrication was the second part of the situ studio, in which they will produce or build projects for other designers. Few years later, situ research was established. Did you know that situ was involved with forensic architecture? They worked together in 5 case studies until situ was funded by an organization, and this allowed them to continue their research on their own. Lastly, Who Builds Your Architecture started when one of the partners asked to the Guggenheim Foundation to ensure that the construction employees will be treated fairly at the museum in Abu Dhabi. Media and newspapers started to talk about the worker rights petition, but architects were silent. So they brought the question back to architects and asked them, who builds your architecture? Can you believe that? One of their first projects was to use public panels in Manhattan so they can attract architects and talk about the main question. Architects were interested in the question, but they weren't willing to talk about it publicly.
I really liked the exhibition is inviting us to step aside from our comfort zone and to try to look at architecture from a new lens. To view architecture as an intellectual field is quite fascinating.